Hey, what's up? So, before we really get started here, I got a little surprise for you. It's a fireplace, but we can't use it because it's too loud. So, there goes that idea. It's supposed to set the ambiance and whatever. So before we really jump into this, I do want to preface everything by saying a few things. First off, if I look tired and haggard through this, it's because I am. I've been pacing back and forth for like 2 hours in this room trying to work up the courage and kind of articulate everything that I want to say, because there's a lot and it takes a lot for some reason to do this. And the second thing is that I want to make it clear that I'm not, by doing this, trying to say that I can speak for everybody that grows up without a dad or that deals with something similar or whatever. All I can really speak for is myself. Really, honestly, it's kind of the complete opposite. It's something that's difficult to understand, even if I've come to terms with it like I have. It's still something that's relatively unsettled. So I think that doing this will help me. But the whole point behind me doing YouTube is because I want to be real and I want to connect with people, right? So I guess I can't really do that if I'm not being real and trying to connect with people. So this will be, just know that it's coming from a genuine place, all right? I'm not trying to get sympathy or trying to come up with something new necessarily, get views or anything like that. All right, I'm rambling. So it's time to actually really jump into the...
Let's just jump into it.
Here we go. You ever wanted to play therapist before? Now's your chance. I also brought some bubbles, but the top thing broke, so it's kind of a pain in the ass. That's enough bubbles. I guess I should start things off by kind of just going through the facts, you know. Facts. So basically, my mom had me when she was very, very young, and my dad was too. Like, I'm talking like high school young. If the stories are to be believed, my dad did not attend my birth because he was at a party or something. I don't know. Memory's a little hazy on that one, obviously, because I was 0 years old. So my dad was pretty much told to boot, scoot, and boogie from the beginning. So I basically ended up being raised during my earliest years by mainly my aunt, my mom, and my grandma. And we kind of, like, I grew up in Pekin for a little bit in a really, really poor neighborhood. And then my aunt moved to a small town about an hour and a half away, and then we moved there, and I think I was like 4 or 5. I don't know, I went to kindergarten in this small town. So we move away, good old Pa stays back in the same area where I was born, where my mom had lived all her life. And basically all you really need to know is that he wasn't around very much at all. And then when I was, I want to say 7 or 8, this wonderful woman named, I'm not going to say the name, but this woman who had ended up with my dad and would end up marrying him back in the same area of Peoria, Pekin area. She got in touch with my mom because they were also having a child, and they wanted me to be close with the person who had become my little brother. So that was kind of how I even saw my dad in my younger years. So I was back and forth from Peoria to the place where I grew up a lot. So I got to be really close with my little brother and my stepmom through that. And then through that, I would also see my dad pretty often. And from what I can remember, I know that he got in trouble with my mom a lot. Yeah, I don't even remember exactly what it was that he would do. I think he would just like let us stay up too late and play video games. And he probably did a bunch of other stupid stuff that I don't remember. But I know that from like 7 to whatever other age, like a year or two, from like 7 to 9, I didn't really have any disdain or dislike for my dad at all. It's just like he was my dad. Like, I was just excited to see him. At least from what I can remember. Again, this is all very hard to recall, even when I'm not extremely tired. So it turns out that back in Peoria with my little brother and my stepmom, he was kind of a monster. He would come home drunk a lot, cause a lot of commotion, break, which was really tough on my little brother and my stepmom. So They divorced eventually. He made some more mistakes. And then it would just be me going to visit my little brother a lot. So, and then up to this point in my life, I don't have a whole lot of memories from being with my dad, but I know that everything I remember is not good. The one that sticks out the most to me is that sometime after he and my stepmom had separated, I hadn't heard from him in a long time. So then all of a sudden my mom gets a call at mine and her's apartment over in the small town where I grew up, and it's him. And then so they talk on the phone for a while. I don't recall what the tone of their conversation, but it couldn't have been too bad because it ended up with him getting on the phone with me. And I just remember hearing his voice, and then I just let out this shocked tone. I was like, "Dad?" Like that. And then I don't remember anything else from the conversation, but the one part that sticks out is that he asked me if I still had his wrestling video game that we would play a lot. It was one of those WrestleMania ones, like Legends of WrestleMania or something on the PlayStation 2. And then when I told him that I lost it or I didn't know where it was, I just remember this sound of genuine disappointment coming out of him. He didn't say like, well, how could you lose that, or I'm so disappointed in you or whatever, but just this, the way that he said whatever he said back made me feel like, oh, I let you down. I mentioned earlier that he would get in trouble. There was one instance of him getting in trouble that I remember because I caused it. He would go out and drink a lot at night, and I would always sleep in the living room. And one time he snuck back in. It must have been super early, and I woke up, but he didn't know I was up. And then on the TV, he put on some show, and then some girl had her boobs out or whatever. And I told my mom about it, and he got in a lot of trouble for that one.
But wait, there's more.
The next memory that I have is I was a little bit older. I was 12 or 13 or whatever. And I was on one of my bi-weekly weekend visits to my little brother, and we were over at our aunt's house down the street. And he was supposed to be paying child support, which he wasn't, and he was supposed to be doing visitations all the time, which he wasn't. He hadn't done a visitation with my little brother in months. And then I just remember he just showed up outside in this hideous green sports car, the sports cars that white trash people buy for some reason. And he showed up and he was trying to take my little brother, and I don't know if he knew if I was there or not, but he was allowed by law to be able to take him. And then my aunt obviously was no, you can't take him, because my brother didn't want to go. And then the police get called, and then the police and they so bad didn't want to do it because they understood the situation, but there was nothing they could do. It was the law. He was legally allowed to come see his kid. So basically my little brother is dragged away from the house kicking and screaming, and has to go with my dad, and they'd go do whatever it is they would do. And then he gets back that night, and God, the whole experience was just miserable. I remember looking out the window, peering through, I was so terrified I didn't want my dad to see me, which is weird. I don't know. We'll get into my feelings later. I'm just trying to give you the facts now. And then I think that was the last time that I saw him. Honestly, if my little brother was here, he could give you far more interesting facts and stories. Not necessarily good stories. They're not feel-good stories, but he's got a lot more experience with him. Yeah, and then time went on, and I haven't seen him in probably 10 years, something like that. So those are the facts of it. There aren't a whole lot of them, so that's why I kind of wanted to get through it first, just so you could understand what my situation was. Now, a very important thing to note about all this is that I had the best support group possible. I had the most ideal non-dad situation in existence, bar none. My mom wouldn't keep my dad around, just not because he didn't want to be with her, but because she didn't want to be with him, for one, And for two, even at such a young age, she had the insight to know that it's not worth it to keep a parental figure around if they're just gonna be irresponsible and not good for the kid. She was very, very smart about that. So she was just like, fuck off. And my entire family stepped in to fill that void, or at least to try to. And they all did an exceptional job. I mean, everybody took care of me. I never felt like I wasn't loved or wanted or needed by any of them, by any stretch. So I know that I'm it seems like I'm skimping over a lot of stuff. Or it might not to you, but it is to me, because this is a whole life that I'm trying to encapsulate in a little video. But that's the most important thing to note, is that my whole family had my mom's back, had my back, supported her. Endlessly, relentlessly supported us. We were always taken care of. I was always taken care of. I never felt like I didn't matter, because everybody, just loved the shit out of me. So I had that, so that's nothing to complain about. But the weirdest thing about all this is that even with that much support, there's still like there's something that isn't fulfilled. And I don't know if it's because culturally now you're supposed to have a mom and a dad, or if it's natural. I don't really know what it is, but it will impact you regardless if you grew up without your dad. Which leads me into, how did all of this make me feel? I didn't see my dad as how you're supposed to see a dad, like as a parental figure. He might as well just been like an uncle or something. But then as I grew up and I kind of learned, I saw the punches in the walls when I would go over to see my brother, and I saw, the way that him and my stepmom would interact. I kind of started to grow a different feeling towards him. I started asking my mom questions, and she never would badmouth him or anything like that. She would just try to give me the truth, the right amount of the truth, in the best way possible. And a lot more truth would come up later on as I got older, like closer to the age that I am now. And in case you're curious at this point from the details that you've gotten about my dad, whatever you're picturing in your head is probably not far from the truth. He's always wearing button-up shirts. He's short, tubby, insecure, mean tendencies, mean sense of humor. Plays in a lot of garage bands. You know the type. So my feelings started to kind of change as I was growing older. And then when it all kind of came to a head and they got the divorce, and then I knew that he was cheating on my stepmom, and I knew that he would show up drunk and he would cause all these problems and yelling fits and give my little brother panic attacks, I really started to not like the fucker. Mainly because of how he made my little brother feel. I always felt really protective of my little brother, and I've always loved him to death. So, and like I said, my dad never felt like my dad anyway, so it wasn't hard for my feelings towards him to slip to resentment. The way that I would kind of filter out that anger and resentment was through humor, which is kind of how I deal with just about anything that actually bothers me. I remember this one instance, and this was around the time when my feelings were just kind of starting to the point that they would come to where it's like I dislike this person. I was telling kids, and I don't know where I got this idea, I was telling other kids in my school that my dad sleeps in women's underwear. I guess he might, but I don't know where I got that idea from. And in retrospect, I don't really know how that was supposed to help my case. I don't really understand where I made the connection of, if I tell these kids that my dad wears women's underwear, we can all just laugh at him, and then that's good. What kind of conclusions is that going to draw about me? And then growing up throughout the years when I was a lot younger, I know that my mom would say that I would say things like I wished that I had a dad, or wouldn't it just be nice if we could just find someone else or whatever, which really tore my mom up. But she loved me so much and was so smart about everything and did so well and handled everything with such emotional maturity, that she would not accept a man into her life to fulfill the role of father for me if they didn't fit the bill, if they couldn't pull it off. And we live in a world with few great men, and she would accept nothing less than great. So that was really tough on her. As far as I remember, I don't think it was that tough on me necessarily. To be honest, I don't think I ever really got my hopes up too much about anybody, especially as I got older. So what types of effects did that have on me personally, my development? I think that probably the biggest one was that I would often project the role model role onto other people. Just whatever adult men were around would probably get that treatment if I sensed any semblance of decency or honor in them or whatever. I would, immediately just kind of look at them in that way. Not even on purpose. I wouldn't say like, I wish you were my dad or anything like that. Like, I would just kind of just naturally project it. I would kind of look up to them. If I felt like I disappointed them, I would be really, really upset. And then as I got older, like junior high through high school, I would kind of do it with just about everyone. Anyone that I saw as a strong male figure would become like, oh, I need that. I need their acceptance. I need to be, I need to follow in their lead. I can learn a lot from this person. Other kids my age, friends. And I would only do that if I sensed a lot of strength or confidence or something powerful about them, I guess. So I think that not having a dad really did that to me. And I think it's kind of important to talk about what kind of person I was growing up, and then kind of let's see if maybe we can draw some sort of connection from the lack of having a decent father and also a father that I personally didn't really connect with or like to, the type of person that I was growing up. See if maybe we can draw some sort of conclusions there. I've always been really sensitive to emotions. Emotions are kind of the driving force for me. I think that that's the biggest thing. Like even like artistically or whatever. I don't know. I've always been emotional. I've always felt things really strongly. So when I was younger, around 6, 7 or whatever, I was really, really serious. I was very stoic and didn't really have much of a sense of humor. Then my mom showed me some Adam Sandler movies, and then I got a sense of humor. But that emotionalness still stayed there. And as we do more Storytime videos, you'll see that's a recurring thing. I think that had my mother and my family handled this whole situation poorly, you'd probably have a very different gauge here today. I know that I was always I'm very much an observer. I look at people a lot. I would rather study someone from afar than actually talk to them. I'm very introverted. I don't like to talk to a lot of people. I was always very creative. I prefer to be in my own little worlds. So I played a lot of video games. I read a lot of books. So I think that the lack of my dad being in my life contributed to some of those things. I think subconsciously there was a lot of resentment and anger and also sadness. It's not that he outright said, I don't accept you. It's just, what do you think that says to a kid when you don't want to reach out to them and you don't ask about them and you don't try to get involved? The creativity, my dad's he's a musician, I guess, but I don't know, the creativity's always kind of been my thing. My mom and my grandma nurtured the hell out of that. My aunt did too. Creativity, I don't think that really has anything to do with him. My introvertedness, I don't know. When I was always insecure as a kid, and I do think that maybe a part of that could be, or maybe most of that could be due to that lack of acceptance. I'm very confident at my core. So I do think this insecurity thing was something that I kind of started with the dad thing and then kind of picked up through school. And I think there is definitely a connection there. I think the only thing from all this that I haven't overcome, this extreme desire to be recognized, which always clashed with my insecurity and my introvertedness, which made growing up extremely confusing. I've mostly overcome being insecure. I've greatly embraced my creativity and my sense of humor and all these things. Those are things that my family taught me to nurture, and I did. But I never did overcome that irrational. I want everybody to look at me. I want everybody to recognize me. And I think that's something that's partially cultural as well. That's kind of what you're supposed to do. That's what all the top dogs do. They become famous. Everybody looks at them. So that's probably a part of it. It's probably just natural to human, but I know that my desire for it is like, it's survival to me. The only way that I'll reach the next level of who I am as a person is if I can pull that off. And I've had that since I was very, very young. So I think that this contributed to that, and I never really got past that feeling. That's why I'm on a webcam right now doing this. And for that, I couldn't be more thankful, really. Because if this video is out there and it's, and if anything that I do or have done or whatever, I'm well aware that this is not going to catch like wildfire, but it's here. And I made it, and it will always be here. And if anybody has come to this and they feel what I feel, or they've connected to it, or anything, then that only ever happened because of this incredibly strong desire to reach out to people, to connect. That's a great thing. If this helps even one person, or if this makes even one person feel not so alone, I guess, or the way I felt, which is like you're the only one that does this. I always felt like just like an outsider, and I still do, but that doesn't bother me anymore. And it makes me gives me energy. It makes me feel good. So I think that's one thing that can be extremely unhealthy that I've turned into a healthy thing. And that's taught me so many lessons in this entire journey of growing up without a dad, and then having to go through all these things, running through role models like it was going out of style. I was constantly let down, not even always in a bad way, but by let down I mean I was constantly shifting, I guess, from role model to role model. I learned, even though it was the hard way, I learned that I have to be my own role model. I have to be my own thing. I have to fill that role for myself, and I'm doing that every day by continuing what I'm doing and being confident and pursuing this relentlessly, regardless of whatever other feelings I feel, whether I feel sad or whether I feel angry or whether I feel whatever. I'm constantly able to back myself up. While this isn't the story of myself that's particularly the biggest part of my life, it's probably the first thing that sent me on this path of all these other stories that you're going to hear from me in the future, and all of everything is because of this. This set the tone of my life. It's made me such an independent spirit, and it's hardened me, but in the right ways. Overall, it was a good thing. It's not, that sounds weird to say now. I can't believe I just said that, but overall, this was a good thing. Yeah, holy shit, it was a good thing. I think I said everything I wanted to say. Wow, how about that? Did not expect that. That was it. I hope you enjoyed your therapist ASMR. In all honesty, I really hope that this did something for someone, because this is a tough thing, especially if you're younger. I think it can be really helpful to hear from somebody who has been through it, but also has a pretty grounded and pretty rational view of all of it. Like, I think that I do. It's something I've thought about so many times. I still think about it. It impacts you. Not having a dad has a huge impact on you. And I know that one thing that I would do is I would read articles online about growing up without a dad. And it's important not to let that define you. If reading one of those makes you feel better about how you feel or whatever, that's great. But don't let that article writer or that professional psychologist or therapist or whatever tell you who you are. Only you know that. And this is all a journey. If you've got a setback like that from the beginning, it's something to overcome, but defeating that, not defeating it necessarily, but understanding that part of yourself, coming to that in a good way, is such a huge advantage. It teaches you so much about yourself. Mental challenges that life throws at you are the most valuable things, because the wisdom and the knowledge of yourself that you get by the end of that is completely invaluable. When you're forced to learn yourself like that, it's kind of like either you're gonna spiral out of control or you're gonna figure yourself out. So I don't know, I'm rambling again. I'm just gonna let the fireplace play us out. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. If you like what you just watched, subscribe. Next time, I'm gonna be a lot less serious, but we're gonna keep doing this because I liked it. It's good for me. It's good for me. Maybe I can pretend this is like a control.